This is the first in a series of videos to take you through a revision process. This is the overview video, and so in this video tutorial I'm going to take you through the entire checklist briefly so you can see which problem each of the steps address, and then you can decide whether you want to watch the video for each of the steps or whether you would prefer instead to just look at some of the targeted videos for specific problems that you might be having. So the first step addresses the formatting of the document. These suggestions are based on neuroscience research about what is most effective in helping readers process information. And so while some of these suggestions may seem counterintuitive, they actually make the document substantially easier for a reader to handle. And again, there will be a video on this specific step to go into detail. The second step is to eliminate the wall of words. This is about paragraphing. You want to make sure that you have managed the information for the reader so that the reader doesn't have to organize the information on her own as she reads the document. The third step is what I consider to be the most significant revision step that a lawyer or a judge can take, because this one addresses the problem that I believe to be most responsible for lack of clarity in analytical documents containing legal analysis, whether they're written by an advocate or whether they're written by a judge. The biggest problem seems to be a lack of clarity at the sentence level, and this step will help you identify and remedy most, if not all, sentence level problems. Step 4, eliminate clumsy words and phrases. This step just helps you, after you've shaped it up and made sure that it's generally readable and accessible to the reader, make sure that you simplify some of the more complex phrases that aren't completely necessary. And so it uses a document that's published in a law review article by Eugene Volokh to help you with that. The next step, step 5, is sort of a catch-all step. It is a step that uses the Find feature in Microsoft Word to help you identify problems that are very common in legal documents and that are very easy to remedy. Unfortunately, trying to edit or revise or proofread a document from beginning to end is really not the best way to find and remedy the problems that come up the most often. You need a targeted strategy. And so the revision checklist as a whole gives you a strategy for going through the document, but this step in particular gives you a way of searching for those things that you might not catch in a proofread through. And so they're going to catch some passive voice for you. They're going to catch some misuse of words like which and that and whether and if. They're going to give you a chance to evaluate whether you've used the punctuation correctly, whether you've got some typos that spell check may not work, whether you've got some commonly misused words, and then finally some common clunkers. So this just gives you a targeted way to check for the things that are harder to find if you read them in context, reading the document from start to finish. And then the last step addresses some apps that writers can use. This is the last step because I don't recommend using these until you've already completed the other steps and done the best you could to revise the document, and then you can use these things to do sort of cleanup for things that you didn't catch. But if you use these as your primary method of proofreading or catching stylistic or grammatical errors, you may be disappointed because you may not actually find everything that you need to find. And these apps aren't designed specifically for legal writers, and so they may not find the most common legal writing errors. So that's why I recommend that you use these at the very end. And again, I'll talk about these at the end of the process in the step 6 video. In addition to this revision checklist, the documents that I'll use, the clumsy words and phrases, that's for step 3. Again, this is from a law review article by Eugene Volokh. You see here the citation, volume 48 of the Journal of Legal Education, page 247. The list appears on pages 269 to 72. And it's about writing a student article, but it applies to really any legal document. These are these are words and phrases that lawyers like to use, but that really don't serve a necessary purpose. And so instead, you might want to consider the simpler alternatives. Some other documents that you might be interested in. One is transitions for connecting sentences smoothly. The checklist doesn't address transitions, but one of the concerns that many lawyers have about drafting more concisely is that the writing will then become stilted. And the remedy for stilted writing, or for sort of choppy writing, is really transitions. And so this is a great list of transitions. It comes from Just Writing by Ann Inquist and Laurel Oates, which is a great style book for legal writers. And this list of transitions can be very helpful. This is an article from Illinois Bar Journal. It's a very short article by Maureen Collins called A Punctuation Primer. And this just covers the definitions of the most common marks of punctuation so that you can refresh your memory on that. And so that it makes it easier in step 5 to evaluate whether or not you've used your punctuation correctly. The next list, Words with Special Legal Meanings, comes from a book called Effective Legal Writing by Gertrude Block. And this covers words that, that you should use only for their legal meanings and not for their common colloquial meanings. And then the final document is a list of confusing pairs. This is also from Gertrude Block's Effective Legal Writing, and this is a number of pairs of words that we often get confused: affect and effect, principal and principal, and so on. Words that are similar, have similar meanings, but are distinctly different and need to be used differently. Imply and infer is on this list. That's another one that I notice that a lot of legal writers will mix up. So that's another document that could be helpful to you. And that's the source of that particular document. So I hope that the checklist is helpful to you. I hope that it streamlines your writing process. And again, if you were only going to do one step, I would do step 3. If you only had time for a few steps, I'd start with step 3 and then do step 1 and step 2 in that order. And then if you have time for the full revision process, then I would go all the way through 4, 5, and 6. And again, I don't recommend that you do, if you're going to do all 6 steps, I don't recommend that you do them all at one sitting. This is incredibly detailed work and can get very tedious very quickly. And so I recommend that you break this up into pieces and do it a little bit at a time. Specifically with step 3, I recommend that you do that one a paragraph at a time. Not necessarily that you take a break between paragraphs, but that you handle one paragraph and then move on to the next one as you do that process. Okay, happy writing.